Okay, today we have a fun year-end topic, and that is the top reissues of 2022. So I think like a week or two ago, I talked about the best new releases, specifically new music that had been recorded, put out in 2022. This is dusting off old recordings and putting out, presumably if it made the list, high quality reissues of previously existing content. So I'm going to cover 16 albums today. It's going to be rapid fire, a little bit of a show and tell kind of thing. One thing that I want to get out of the way up front is I want to cover those albums that I've actually already talked about in some prior videos. So I'm not going to talk about them really at all. I'm just going to show them to you because they've already had their time to shine, and I'll drop some links in the description so you can access those videos if you want to hear my thoughts, because I think on most of these, I think on each of these initial ones, I already did like a full shootout comparison, so I'm not gonna get into that again. But 16 titles, 4 of these, again, I've already talked about at length. So those 4 are, firstly, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, UHQR, 45 RPM. Really great. I said it in my video, one of the best sounding albums in my entire collection, and I stand by that now a few months later. The next one was in the Tone Poet release schedule. Excuse the exterior baggy, it's probably casting some light, but that is John Coltrane's Blue Train, the Complete Masters. In my video, I mentioned I preferred the stereo presentation when it came to the reissue, and so that's why that one makes my list. Next up, and perfect for the season, you have Vince Guaraldi's A Charlie Brown Christmas. This is the deluxe edition, has some great additional content. If you want to hear more about that, check out my shootout. And then finally, one more Tone Poet, actually. I think the only other one that's making this list is Bobby Hutcherson's Stick Up. This is one that, I already had the original, decided to buy the Tone Poet, see how it stacked up, and love it. Anytime that Blue Note wants to put out some Bobby Hutcherson content, I am here for it. So that's the 4 that I wanted to get out of the way up front. Now we're going to get into some other titles. Some of these you're probably aware of. These aren't like, hidden titles that no one knew was reissued in 2022, but maybe some of them are new. Maybe you weren't aware of the music at all. Maybe you're aware of the music, but you didn't know that there was a reissue. So that's what I'm going to cover now for the rest of this video. But again, pretty rapid fire. So the next thing I want to talk about as we sort of kick things off is the BBE, which stands for Barely Breaking Even, BBE J-Jazz series, or Japanese jazz music. This series has been in existence for a couple of years. Every title they put out has been stellar. They seem to choose stuff that is unattainable in its original form, but I think more importantly, just really stellar stuff that I think is underappreciated. Some of these I wasn't even aware of until they decided to reissue them. And let's be real, I'm no Japanese jazz expert, although I do think that I pay more attention to that sort of subgenre than maybe some. But still, I was not aware of these titles until BBE decided to put them out. And the first one I want to talk about, this may be like my favorite reissue of the year. It really might be. It sounds just so good. So this is Masaru Imada's, it's the Masaru Imada Trio +1, and the title of this release is Planets. So you can see it right here. I believe it is just called Planets, although on the back, it's sort of the subheading says First Planets on Blue Road. So anyway, stellar release. It is a single disc, despite the fact that it's in this gatefold packaging, and despite the fact that that there's an extra pocket in here. They just have an insert in that extra pocket. But just a absolutely fantastic release. Masaru Imada is probably a familiar name to those of you who even dabble in Japanese jazz music. And when I put this on, not only did I think this is the best of the one of the best of the year, but I thought this might be the best in the BBE J-Jazz series, and I do have to buy them all. And so I've heard them all, and the detail on this recording is just absolutely glorious. It's fantastic. Highly recommend that title. The next one, also in the BBE J-Jazz series, is a double LP 45 RPM, and that is Yasuhiro Kohno Trio +1, and the title of the album is Song of Island. So as I said, this is a double LP. Obviously, you're going to have the gatefold jacket, lovely presentation. In the J-Jazz series, they always include the Obi strip, which I know a lot of folks like to see, which is right here. This was actually recorded in 1985. I don't have that much music in my collection that's from the 80s. And that's a blind spot for me. But anyway, again, when BBE decided to reissue this in such a fantastic sort of package, and because it's part of that series, obviously I had to get it. Incidentally, there was one other that they decided to put out called Push, and I tried my best to get a copy that wasn't warped this year. Unsuccessful so far. But I do look forward to the rest of their release schedule. They actually are releasing another one in January. So if either of those two titles are difficult to get for you, I haven't looked to see whether it's available. The pre-order for their next one is available currently, and you can go and pre-order it. But seriously, also preview the tracks. Don't just decide to pre-order something because I think it's good, because it may not be for you. All right, next up, it's been a while since this was put out, so you may have lost track that this actually was put out in 2022, but Craft Recordings put out Bill Evans' You Must Believe in Spring. This is a all analog mastering from the original master tapes, pressed on 180 gram vinyl and in a 45 RPM format. Thus, it is a double LP. You have this lovely gatefold, huge upgrade from the original, I want to say, what was it, like Warner Brothers, or was it Fantasy? I want to say it was like a Warner Brothers release originally, but huge upgrade in terms of packaging. This is not a tip-on sleeve, but it is like a very nice textured kind of thing. Super sturdy, really great. Kevin Gray was involved with this thing in terms of the mastering, which obviously you want to you want to have, or it's nice to have. And yeah, I mean, I knew that this album was great before they put out the reissue. And when I got the reissue, I sold my original, because I was like, well, I'm never going to listen to that again. Because this just reminded me how great of a recording that it is, especially for like late period Evans, which I'm kind of torn, because at the same time I know that Bill Evans had like really high sort of consistent quality throughout his entire career. There's just, the problem is there's so much like sexiness with his early recordings, and less energy around his later ones from like a collectability standpoint. And this is just one of those, I don't know, humps that I have to get over in my head, right? Like, just because it's much easier to get and much more affordable to get some of these later albums, it doesn't mean that they're not as good. And I think that You Must Believe in Spring is a great example of a later period album of his that is just phenomenal. I mean, they did such a good job. Next two are actually by Acoustic Sounds. This, let's see, we have Ella and Lewis. So Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. And apologize for the glare here. This is one of those tip-on sleeves, like a Stoughton probably tip-on sleeve. Really, really excellent. I could not believe how good this sounded. And I do have an original of this, and I have done a comparison, although I haven't done a video on it. And I don't want to say it isn't close, because the original pressing does sound quite good, especially for when it was recorded. But this one is just the detail around this pressing. It is just beautiful, beautiful audiophile pressing, especially on the track Isn't It a Lovely Day? This is track 2. And you may not hear it necessarily when Ella is singing, but as soon as Louis Armstrong comes in and you hear this sort of like quality of his voice, and some of like the almost like guttural sort of like noises and attacks and stuff that he makes, it is just absolutely gorgeous. I think that this is the best way to hear this music. So next one, also Acoustic Sounds in their Verve series as well, and this is the Oscar Peterson Trio, We Get Requests. I am guilty of passing over this album for years and years and years in stores. I felt like I would see this and like Night Train and some of other Oscar Peterson's work, and I wouldn't give it any attention. I figured, like, doesn't he have that kind of cocktail pianist sort of reputation? And I was quite wrong, because not only is this particular album really fantastic, sounds amazing. Again, like the detail in this pressing is just absolutely absurd. What this album did, though, is it unlocked the rest of his discography, at least for me. So I know that Acoustic Sounds is putting out another, at least couple more releases, I think in this very same series, coming up in like January, February timeframe. Those are pre-orders that you should be able to get. So let's see. Ryan Smith from Sterling Sound did the mastering on this thing. I am quite sure it is all analog from the original tapes, because that is what Verve is doing with these, and probably the hype sticker would tell me as well. Yes, it is mastered from the original analog tapes. QRP pressing, 180 gram vinyl, tip-on jacket, just like they've been doing for the rest of their series. So anyway, those are absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best sounding reissues, definitely, of 2022. All right, next one up is by a relative newcomer in terms of reissue vinyl, and they go by the name Newland Records. They are based out of the UK, I believe. Yes, they are. And the release that they put out, well, actually one of many releases they put out this year, is Howard McGhee's Dusty Blue. They also tackled a, Charles Mingus Modern Jazz Symposium this year, a couple of others. There's a Blue Mitchell on Mainstream. They have some other titles that are on the docket for this coming year. They are definitely one of those labels to check out, be on the lookout for. I know that you can either order directly from them, or if you wait, you can get it from Acoustic Sounds, but sometimes you have to wait too long, in my opinion. So I've been getting these direct from the label, but let's see, this is mastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. It is on 180 gram vinyl. This is not a all analog pressing. They did the best they could in terms of the material that was available. And what I can say is that this sounds worlds better than the original, because I did a comparison, although I don't think I've done a video on it, but I did sort of a A/B testing between this and an original pressing. This wins hands down. It is absolutely fantastic. So highly recommend Dusty Blue by Howard McGhee. Next one up was also early in the year. There's a lot of energy around this one, and so I know that there was a lot of folks who wanted it who couldn't get it. I don't know if it's going to come back in print. Maybe it will. They initially said that this was going to be limited to 5,000 copies. 5,000? Like, I'm surprised that this many sold, but just because it's relatively obscure. This is Kenny Dorham's Matador. So this is originally put out in the United Artists label. This is a all analog 180 gram vinyl from the original master tapes. That is the language that Impex used. So Impex did put this out. They have a great reputation and no complaints here with this particular one. These are, again, they say limited edition, because I think most of the time Impex does limited edition, number 250 out of 5,000 for those folks who care about the number that they get. But anyway, I was really happy that they decided to tackle this, because I think anything that Kenny Dorham put out, you should get in the best version that you can, and this certainly would seem to be the best version. Again, I have an original pressing of this that I haven't sold yet. Mine's not in great shape. This is one of those records that's really difficult to find in great shape. So anyway, happy that they put it out. Not a tip-on jacket, but here's the thing. The original was this sort of like nice cardboard textured thing, and they did an excellent job of replicating that. Like, there's this texture on this thing is really nice, and I find the back just absolutely gorgeous. So for folks who like the visual element of these records, the blacks are dark and there's like great clarity in his face, and the whites are bright, and it looks really nice. Also, the image kind of wraps around on the edge, which makes it a title that's easy to find on your shelves, which I appreciate, and just again that extra detail that Impex typically does. This next one, bit of a surprise, and the reason why is because, so let me say this, I am a member of Vinyl Me Please, and I know not everybody's a fan of it. They don't like the idea of it, which I don't know exactly why. I mean, obviously it's a subscription model, and I think some people associate that with it just being a money grab. Here's the thing, I don't actually take the monthly record that they put out every month. Sometimes I just take store credit instead, and the reason why is because even though they typically have great titles for their official monthly release, sometimes they're not what I want, and they have other exclusives that otherwise you'd have to buy separately, that sometimes eclipse what that monthly release is. So I will just sometimes take store credit instead of the monthly and then wait for some of these other releases. Like they started putting out the Black Jazz titles on a sort of marbled gray vinyl that are great, and I picked up some of those. There's some other titles. In fact, I don't think that this is the only Vinyl Me Please record on this list. I'm going to have to double check on that. But anyway, what we have here, let me just get to it. Ornette Coleman's The Shape of Jazz to Come. Now that you can see this little obi, I don't actually really like these things, so I'm just going to set that aside for a second. But absolutely gorgeous cover. This feels like it's one of those, high gloss laminate tip-on things, but gorgeous all around. Obviously, with VMP editions, they're going to add their stamp on all of them. But anyway, it was a weird year for me because I've never owned this record in any format whatsoever until this year. I found an original pressing, and then like 2 months later, they decided to feature this for their monthly release. So, I mean, I didn't have to get it, but I was really curious how it was going to sound, and I can attest this edition sounds great. I was quite surprised because not every VMP release sounds great. Not all of them are all analog editions. This one is with lacquers cut from the original mono tapes by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound, pressed on 180 gram vinyl, just black vinyl. Which I think you kind of want for like a classic like this. I don't know. There's also some additional listening notes in the form of one of these little booklets that VMP likes to include. So anyway, am I like a diehard fan of VMP? No, but they put out enough to keep me interested. And again, with that store credit option, I just keep renewing because I'm always interested in what's coming out, and I want to have a shot at getting the stuff that I want. All right, I decided to follow up that other VMP title with one more because I did verify that one of these records was indeed a VMP reissue. So going to need some help with the pronunciation here, but I believe Yakhal Inkomo, and this is the Mankunku Quartet, something like that. I was not aware, actually I think I was aware of this title, but it was one of those that was just cost prohibitive for me to get an original of, and VMP put this out as part of their exclusive series, which means it's not one of their monthly releases, but if you're a member, you get first dibs at one of these limited reissues. They did 1,000 of them. This is 706, number 706. They stamp it on the back for you. So the details on this, it's on 180 gram vinyl. They're calling it a black smoke vinyl, but let me double check because recently there was some reissue where they said it was on limousine black vinyl, but it ended up just being black vinyl. And I was like, well, that's kind of a weird marketing thing. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't, hopefully this isn't just glare that you see, and hopefully you can kind of see the texture in the vinyl. I could take it or leave it. The color of the vinyl that it's on makes absolutely no impact on my desire to get the record, but it is what it is. That's how they decided to put it out. So the other details on this, it says that it's a special half-speed mastered and cut at Abbey Road Studios by Miles Showell. So, I mean, here's the thing. When they say special half-speed mastered, and they don't say AAA or all analog, then it means that it wasn't, right? But it sounds great, and here's the thing. How else are you going to hear this album except in this format? Because again, I think this is one of those that's really difficult to find in its original pressing. And that's one of the things that's cool about VMP. And some of these other reissue labels, right? They're bringing forward music so that everybody can hear it, and it's not just in the hands of like, the collectors who were lucky enough to get a copy probably before they all went way up in value. The next one was another that I would say I wasn't aware of, I don't think whatsoever, and this is a Record Store Day purchase. I didn't actually show up on Record Store Day, I got it afterward. But this is put out by Now Again, and it is the Bobby Hamilton Quintet Unlimited, and the title is Dream Queen. So yeah, I mean, it's honestly, this is pretty flimsy. I mean, it's not like the best packaging, but then again, Record Store Day releases rarely are. It's much more about the music in my experience than it is about like, say, the cover. And this is pretty flimsy. It's not that great, but this also wasn't expensive. I think it was like $22 or $24 retail. So very inexpensive. This is let's see what it says, because I'd always rather state what they say, and then we can kind of talk about what it means. But anyway, Bernie Grundman resequenced Bobby's long lost master tape and lacquered this album in an all analog transfer. There's a lot of words there when they could have just said all analog. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like at least they use some of the original metal, right, or some of the original parts. So in any event, though, really fantastic stuff. This Record Store Day release introduced me to the music, and so absolutely no complaints. I'm just happy to be able to hear it. So there you go. Well, I said no complaints, but then I was complaining about the jacket, but give me a break. All right, 2 more to talk to you about. Trying to do this rapid fire as best I can. This one was also one from, I would say, early in the year, and so maybe some folks forgot about it, or maybe some folks weren't aware of it, but this is not squarely in the jazz space, a little bit of sort of ambient electronic, but it is Harold Budd, the Pavilion of Dreams. So this was put out by Superior Viaduct, okay? Actually, even though it's not glossy, it's kind of like the cover has a nice feel to it. It seems like it's high quality. It's definitely a thicker jacket. This is one that I think Harold Budd's material overall seems to be relatively desirable. One of the main reasons why I wanted this title is because Marion Brown plays on it. And I love Marion Brown. I love all of his stuff, or almost all of his stuff, I'll say. And he plays alto at the same time that Harold Budd is kind of going for his like electric piano kind of ambient thing. But this is super atmospheric, and Marion Brown's sax is absolutely gorgeous. And so I was happy to be able to get this again for a fraction of the price that a modern, or excuse me, than an original pressing would cost. So let's see what this says. Does it give me any details? It does say that it's the first time that it's ever been reissued. It was originally put out in 1978, and I guess they haven't done a reissue of it yet, at least on vinyl. It doesn't say anything about the process, but what can you do? If it sounds great, it sounds great, and this one does. So very excited about that one. All right, last one for you, and this is like a little bit unfair because it's actually a box set. I don't buy that many box sets, but when they're worthwhile, I have to. And this one is the Pyramids box set. So this is the 1970s recordings. So it combines, let's see, 4 albums. 3 of them were previously released. So you have Lalibela from 1973, King of Kings from 1974, Birth Speed Merging from 1976, and then you have a sort of a new live title. It's called The Pyramids Live at KQED, presumably radio station, or perhaps a radio station festival, but that's from 1975. So let me do this, because this is just such a part of my fascination and inclusion of this. It is the packaging, but then obviously the more of it is the music, because the music is absolutely gorgeous. I've never owned any of these albums in their original form because they're a little pricey and especially hard to get in good condition. But this is absolutely gorgeous. Strut Records put it out. I actually wasn't even aware of this, and then one of my coworkers plays on a few of these albums, which is really weird because I work for like a logistics company, and he still plays. Brady Speller plays hand drums, and he plays on some of these albums, which I was like, he told me that they were putting this stuff out, and I was like, okay, first of all, I didn't know you played on this, and then I started researching, finding out that he played on some other amazing albums as well. Tarika Blue is one of the Tarika Blue albums he plays on. And anyway, let me get back to this get back to this release. So lovely booklet with interviews. Okay, I'm not going to show you all of them, but it's like probably, I don't know, 8 pages or something front and back of interviews and discussion about these records. And here's the thing: each of these, even though this is box set, they're putting these out in individual releases. And so I think that they're on sale for pre-order right now through Acoustic Sounds. Maybe they're actually available for shipping right now. I'm not entirely sure. It may be January that you have to wait. But initially they only put it out in the box set. I got the box set. Now you can get them individually, but let's be real, I was going to get the box set anyway. So each of these have their own original produced, sort of reproduced cover. These are not tip-on and glossy because they weren't originally, but the texture, very nice. They're relatively thick cardboard, and just really, really beautiful presentation, and the sound, like most importantly, the music, like how does it sound? It sounds great. Now, I would say these aren't like audiophile grade, but here's the thing. My guess is that they don't have the ability to make something that sounds audiophile grade when the source material wasn't of that quality. That's just kind of my take on it. Let me see if I can actually get these out. There is a hype sticker associated with this as well, and apparently I rediscovered it here inside the box. But here's a Birth Speed Merging from 1976. So yeah, you know, again, beautiful reproduction and lovely images. Let's see, here's King of Kings, which is probably the one that most people know, I would say. Probably the most sort of famous of the short catalog that they had. But Idris Akamor is the sort of founder of this group, and he continues to record, apparently. There's been a few other releases by Strut of Idris's, and I think he's putting out new music as well. So here's that new album that I don't think has ever seen the light of day, live at KQED 1975. So perhaps the cover is less inspired, but you know, they came up with it for this release. So that is the last one that I wanted to talk about, is this really exciting box set by the Pyramids. If you don't know the Pyramids, you should just, you know, Google it and find out about them, because they were putting out really interesting work that I'm just, I don't know, I'm like, find myself very drawn to it. You just like listen to it in kind of like a relatively dark room and like just absorb it, and it's very like impactful music. So that is that. Those are my favorite releases in terms of reissues of 2022. I know I missed a bunch, some intentionally, right? I didn't cover like certain titles because I thought that they were relatively lesser. I mean, not everything can make like the top list, right? But then there's probably others that I didn't realize were reissued. So I have a request, and that is that if you think that I missed something, with an emphasis on it sounding like really, really good. Like, I know that there's like famous recordings that were reissued this year, and I'm probably aware of them. But if you think that there's certain exceptions that were particularly well done that sound really, really good, I want to know about them, because you know, because I like music and I like listening to it, and I want to hear it in its best form. So I would appreciate it if you would do that for me. Also appreciate it if you hit subscribe and the notification bell, and I will see you next time.